Hey guys, tonight we begin our journey on horseback. Well, sort of. You're not really galloping, but your mind is. You're gently swaying across the endless Mongolian steppe, your boots nestled into stirrups made of rawhide, a cold breeze tracing your cheekbones, and the hum of hooves drumming beneath your feet. There's no traffic here, just a sky is so wide it makes your eyelids heavy, and the smell of something tangy. Oh, that's the milk. Fermented mare's milk, to be precise. You've signed up, without quite realizing it, for a slow ride with a Mongol caravan, and the first thing they hand you isn't a sword or a map. It's a leather pouch filled with sloshing, half-warm yogurt. Congratulations, you're going to need it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and the local time in the comments. I love knowing who's drifting off where. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The land around you rolls on like a rumpled green blanket. No fences, no roads. The Mongols, ever mobile, treat terrain like water, flowing around hills, slipping past riverbeds, all without needing a single GPS signal. You're learning quickly. Gold isn't what makes this world turn. It's milk, tangy, pungent, lovingly churned. Dairy is their currency, their fuel, their first aid kit, and frankly, their dessert. You take a cautious sip from your pouch. It tastes like someone dared a goat to make lemonade, but oddly, not bad. The locals call it airag, fermented mare's milk. It fizzes slightly, like a tired soda, and leaves your mouth feeling both cleansed and confused. Now, don't think of this as a casual beverage. Here on the steppe, this cloudy liquid is everything. Horses aren't just for riding, they're walking dairy machines. A Mongol family might own hundreds and yet never milk a cow. Cow's milk is considered too heavy, too tame. Mares? Now that's a thrill ride for your digestive system. You watch as a young boy, not much older than 12, leads the horses into a loose corral. He moves like he's part of the herd, anticipating every twitch. Once the mares are calm, the milking begins. No buckets here, just leather containers softened by smoke, ready to be filled with a cloudy harvest. The milk won't last long in this open air unless they ferment it. And they will. They always do. See, the Mongols figured something out that would make modern survivalists nod their head in approval. Fermentation is your best friend. Not only does it preserve milk, but it also makes it digestible for people who lack the lactose enzymes, aka most of the adult human population. Yogurt isn't just a side dish, it's a digestive strategy. Historians still argue whether the Mongols fully understood the microbiology behind fermentation, or if they just followed tradition. Either way, the result was the same: portable nutrition in the form of fizzy, semi-alcoholic milk. Forget protein shakes. This is the OG energy drink. Now, let's talk about logistics. You try packing a diet for a journey across Asia without refrigeration. Go ahead. We'll wait. Jerky helps, sure, but milk? That's a nightmare, unless you're a Mongol. They carry their milk in leather sacks, often suspended from saddles. The bumpier the ride, the better it ferments. Seriously. You're beginning to understand the genius here. Every part of the Mongol diet, and indeed their way of life, was shaped by motion. They lived in gurs, those round, felt-covered tents, that could be packed up in under an hour. They cooked on portable stoves, fueled by dried dung. And their food? It aged in transit, just like a fine, well, let's be generous and call it steppe champagne. An elder rides beside you now, his beard plated with a single silver bead. He laughs when you ask if gold was ever used to trade. He shrugs. Why would I eat gold? Can't put it in tea. He hands you a pouch made from goatskin. It smells like campfire and childhood regrets. Inside, more airag. You smile weakly and take another sip. Quirky detail time. Mongols often stir their fermenting milk with a carved stick called a bulyor, which stays in the same vat for months, sometimes years. It's never washed. They believe the older it gets, the better the culture grows. So yes, you could be drinking yogurt aged inside a gourd, last scrubbed during the fall of the Jin dynasty. The logic is simple. Gold can't keep you alive in a blizzard. Yogurt can. And as the sun dips low, your caravan halts beside a cluster of gers. Fires crackle to life. Smoke spirals upward, meeting a sky dusted with stars. Dinner tonight isn't a feast of roasted beasts. It's broth, cheese curds, and, yep, more fermented milk. You're offered a chunk of dried curd so hard it could chip your tooth. It's called arul, and it's like Mongolian astronaut food. You gnaw politely, pretending not to notice that it tastes like a fossilized foot. Across the fire, a woman laughs softly, seeing your expression. She gestures at the arul. She says, "Good for teeth, good for riding, keeps your stomach brave." Brave stomach. That tracks. And now, as the stars wheel overhead and your eyelids droop, you begin to see the wisdom here. These people, with their dusty boots and cheese-scented pouches, weren't crude barbarians. They were survivalists, engineers of edible resilience. The yogurt wasn't a luxury. It was their engine. And you're starting to like the taste. You wake before the sun, though you're not sure why. Maybe it's the cold nipping at your nose, or the faint sound of metal on leather, or perhaps it's the rhythmic sloshing of something being churned nearby. You crack open one eye, and there she is, a Mongol grandmother with forearms like braided rope, methodically stirring a leather bag full of milk hanging from a wooden frame. You're not dreaming. This is real, and yes, it's still all about yogurt. The sun's barely kissed the horizon, but the camp is already alive. Kids scamper about with armfuls of firewood. Horses snort and shuffle. You rub your eyes and follow the scent of smoke and something sour? Definitely sour. It's morning on the steppe, and breakfast is less about pancakes and more about fermented legacy. In Wonder, a woman is already ladling foamy milk into a goatskin pouch. It's airag in the making, freshly milked from a line of semi-patient mares tied to a long rope outside. One of them eyes you suspiciously. You nod politely. She flicks her tail with deep disapproval. A young boy, no older than 10, carries a bundle of goat hair. He's been tasked with cleaning the filters used to strain curds from whey. You're mildly impressed and deeply relieved no one handed you that job. Mongol kids grow up with responsibilities, but also with dairy practically coded into their DNA. By 5, they can churn milk. By 7, they can identify 5 types of cheese by smell alone. By 12, they're debating the best fermentation temperatures. Probably. You step into one of the larger jurs and find a family clustered around a steaming bowl. The smell hits you first, earthy, tangy, and oddly comforting. This is kilmag, a kind of dairy reduction made by slow-cooking cream until it forms a caramelized crust. It's the closest the steppe gets to crème brûlée. Someone hands you a small wooden spoon and you dive in. Rich, slightly sweet, soothing. You think about gold again and how ridiculous it is to crave metal when this exists. That's the thing. The Mongols didn't just like dairy, they prized it. Livestock was wealth, but milk was vitality. It symbolized not just survival, but status. Fresh mare's milk was reserved for honored guests, clotted cream was hoarded for celebrations. Even today, some Mongol communities will offer a bowl of milk as a greeting, a blessing, or, if you're not careful, a challenge. And woe unto the person who wastes it. You wander outside as the sky lightens. A young girl is beating a goatskin sack with a stick, singing under her breath. She's making tarag, a kind of traditional yogurt that thickens over time in dark corners of the jur. It's low-key a science project, one that depends on invisible bacteria, steady temperature, and a good bit of luck. No pressure. Historians still argue whether this level of dairy obsession was rooted in religious belief or just cold economics. Some suggest that fermented milk had spiritual significance, that it was an offering to the sky gods or a link to ancestral strength. Others claim it was just practical. Portable protein, easy to store, no silver spoon required. Maybe it's both. Maybe when your entire world is portable, you learn to invest not in temples or coins, but in calories that fight off frostbite. Your host family prepares a morning ride. They offer you breakfast, our rule again, this time paired with salted tea steeped in butter. You try not to look alarmed. The taste? Strange, creamy, faintly reminiscent of soup, but with the unmistakable aftertaste of yogurted regret. Still, it warms you. The patriarch of the family, a man with a weather-beaten face and eyes like chipped stone, explains the importance of keeping mares healthy. No milk, no ride, he shrugs. No ride, no life. You sip your tea. That tracks. He continues, telling you how even the fiercest warriors respected the milkmaids. No matter how many cities they conquered, they always returned to the steppe, to mothers and wives who controlled the flow of milk like it was liquid gold. In a society as mobile as the Mongols, dairy production wasn't just women's work, it was power. You hop on a pony and trail behind the family as they move the herd to fresher grass. The wind picks up, carrying with it the smell of dung and damp wool. You try to enjoy the scenery, rolling hills, endless sky, the occasional eagle swooping overhead. But your mind keeps circling back to the way no one here seems impressed by money. You could wave a coin purse and get little more than a shrug. But if you walked into camp holding a full bladder of airag, celebrity status. Even today, in modern Mongolia, fermented dairy holds a kind of cultural prestige. There are festivals dedicated to airag, songs, entire novels. One writer compared the taste of good airag to a kiss from the wind. Another said it was like drinking a cloud after a storm. You personally think it's more like champagne's weird cousin who studied abroad once. But hey, taste is subjective. Your ride ends at a ridge overlooking a small stream. The family unpacks a picnic. Dried meat, more yogurt, and a kind of chewy milk gum that might be centuries old. You chew slowly, admiring their quiet routine. Nothing wasted, no rush, just a morning soaked in sunshine and sourness. You ask the grandmother, yes, the one with forearms of steel, why they never cared for gold. She looks at you with a smile that's half amusement, half pity. She says gold feeds no one. Milk is the only treasure that sings. You nod, pretending to understand, but maybe, just maybe, you do. You don't realize you're attending a royal feast until someone adjusts your tunic and points you toward a grand gare. This one isn't like the others. It's massive, big enough to host 50 people, and its felt walls are dyed with bright reds and indigos. A carved wooden door swings open, letting out a waft of spiced meat and, yes, of course, milk. You've made it to the high table, where fermented mare's milk flows more freely than wine, and gold, if it shows up at all, is merely a decoration. A messenger gestures you inside. You duck into the warmth, blinking in the soft candlelight. In the center, under a dome-like ceiling, sits a man on a low platform. No crown, no throne, just an imposing presence in layered robes. He's smiling, but it's the kind of smile that has watched cities burn and kept sipping tea. Welcome to the Khan's table. A bowl is handed to you, wooden, carved with swirling patterns. Inside, airag, of course. But this batch sparkles faintly and smells a bit more refined. High-quality mare's milk, aged just right, stirred constantly by attendants who treat the ballure like a sacred wand. You take a sip, smoother than usual, almost buttery. Not quite gold, but definitely liquid status. Across from you, an ambassador from the Song dynasty tries not to wince as he drinks. You feel for him. His silk robes don't quite hide the stiff discomfort of someone used to porcelain teacups. Next to him, a Persian merchant nods approvingly, slurping his drink with both hands and a beard full of froth. This, you learn, is more than dinner. It's a negotiation. Historians still debate how much fermented dairy influenced Mongol diplomacy. Did airag soften political tensions? Was it a form of hospitality or a subtle test? Some scholars believe gifting a vat of milk symbolized peaceful intent. Others think it was a flex. Here, drink what we drink, survive it, and we'll talk. And judging by the nervous way the Song diplomat is blinking at his half-finished bowl, it might be both. A hush falls over the gare. A storyteller begins to chant, a rhythmic, droning tale of a great hunt, a clever fox, and a jug of milk that never emptied. The Mongols love stories that blend the mystical with the mundane. You listen, swaying slightly, the milk buzzing faintly in your blood like sleepy champagne. Your host leans over. "Good batch," he says, nodding at your drink. "From the Khan's personal herd." Apparently, some of the best mares are kept close to the royal encampment. Their diet is monitored, their coats brushed daily, and yes, their milk recorded like royal income. You briefly wonder if your glass of airag is worth more than your entire apartment back home. Probably. Food is served, but it's not what you expect. There's no gluttonous pile of roasted meats. Instead, a delicate sequence of milk-based dishes appears. Milk tea with chunks of fat, steamed curds with dried berries, and something jiggly that tastes like buttery flan left on a windowsill too long. You go with it. Mongol cuisine, after all, is a celebration of making do, with style. Across the tent, a man plays a morin khur, the traditional horsehead fiddle. Its sound is haunting, like wind through bone.
You sip more airag. Everything's blurring a little. Not from alcohol, though there's a touch of that, but from the soft glow of communal warmth. There's a gentle rhythm to it all. Sip, chew, listen, nod. Like a lullaby for the politically alert. At some point, you realize there's no gold on display. No coins, no goblets, just wood, bone, leather, and milk. This isn't poverty, it's preference. In a society that moves every season, excess is just weight. What they carry must nourish, impress, and survive frostbite. And what survives best? Yogurt. You spot a tray being passed around. On it, bowls of cream mixed with herbs, and is that rose water? You try a taste. Delicate, cooling, oddly elegant. The Persian merchant beams. Shared recipe, he explains, from my wife's people. So even here, amidst conquest and horsehair, flavors flow across borders. There's another curious item on the table now, a dense, spongy milk cake. It's called itski, made from boiled milk and shaped into discs that last forever. Literally, some pieces are passed down through generations like edible antiques. You try a nibble. It's like chewing a memory, dry, faintly sweet, but surprisingly filling. Then a man in ceremonial garb rises and makes a toast, not with wine, but with yogurt. He speaks of friendship, of the open steppe, and of how milk connects people more honestly than gold. You clink bowls with your neighbors. Foam dribbles down your chin. No one minds. You lean back, full and oddly at peace. There's something comforting about a culture that values nourishment over glitter. In the West, gold is permanence. Here, it's milk that sustains. It requires care, time, and trust. It can't be hoarded without spoiling. It demands attention and offers comfort in return. Your host slaps your shoulder gently. You drank well, he chuckles. You understand now. You think maybe you do.
You ride out from the encampment, full of dairy and diplomacy. Cheeks a little pink from fermented bubbles, head spinning with string music and the scent of smoke. The Khan's feast still lingers on your tongue. Was that fourth bowl really necessary? Probably not, but you're part of something now. You've crossed an invisible line, not with gold coins, but with cultured milk. Your guide, who only answers to Batar, which may or may not be his real name, leads you toward a nearby trade outpost. It's little more than a scattering of felt tents and wooden crates, but in the eyes of the steppe, this is Wall Street. As you approach, the bartering begins, not with shouting or chaotic bidding, but with quiet exchanges of value. Goat hides, iron blades, medicinal herbs, and dairy. You watch a woman trade a bag of dried curds for a set of Turkish ceramic bowls. Another swaps a few wheels of fermented cheese for silk cloth. But the big deal? A single mare and her milk for a young camel. The transaction is quiet. Heads nod. Hands are clasped. No coins change hands. Batar smirks. You thought money meant gold? He gestures around. That mare feeds 3 people for a year. Gold feeds none. Historians still argue whether the Mongol economy functioned as an early cashless society or simply relied on hyper-practical trade. There were coins, yes, when dealing with sedentary cities, but among nomads, The economy was about value measured in calories, warmth, and mobility. If you could write it, eat it, or ferment it, it had worth. And nothing fermented quite like milk. You follow a man to his trading tent. He invites you to sit. Inside, it's cool and dim. From a smoked hide pouch, he pulls out a curved lump of dried something. You sniff. Oh yes, aged butter. Hardened by time, rich in smell, and treated like fine perfume. He explains, with some pride, that it's 5 winters old. A prized possession, he offers to trade it for 3 riding stirrups and a decent rope. The merchant across from him agrees, without blinking. You begin to notice a pattern. Yogurt, butter, cheese, and even milk skin, yes, that's a thing, operate as social signals. The texture of the curds you bring to a gathering says more than any embroidered robe. The tang of your airag declares how far you've traveled, how healthy your mares are, and how skilled your fermenting hands, or your wives, might be. And then there's the goat. You're not sure how it begins, but Batar leads you to a small tent where an old man is polishing a tiny wooden statue. This, Batad whispers, is the goat that bought a city. The old man grins, toothless but triumphant, and tells the tale. Long ago, during a harsh winter, he traveled south with little more than a stubborn goat and a pouch of clotted cream. The goat, apparently, had impeccable milk. In a border village, its yield impressed a minor noble who was desperate for provisions. Long story short, through a series of absurdly lucky barters, the man ended up with a small estate, several oxen, and an adopted son-in-law. All from one productive goat and a really good jar of cream. You sit in stunned silence as the man ladles out the latest generation's offering. Still delicious, though a little furrier than ideal. He insists you take a sip. You oblige, trying not to think too hard about goat lineage and destiny. As the day rolls on, you start to understand the Mongols had cracked a different kind of economy, one driven not by scarcity, but by sustainability. Milk is seasonal, renewable, and alive. Gold is inert. You can't ride gold through a snowstorm. You can't sip it under the stars. You certainly can't pour it over dried noodles and call it lunch. And for the Mongols, it wasn't just about physical needs. Milk was cultural glue. Sharing milk sealed friendships. Offering yogurt honored guests. Spilling milk was worse than swearing. Children were taught to respect the ladle and never let it touch the ground. Even the pots had names. You pause by a tent where a woman is polishing a large round container for fermenting milk. She hums as she works. You ask her what it's called. Hukur, my grandmother's, she says. She pats it affectionately like an old cat. The leather is patched, the seams stitched with horsehair, but it gleams with use. This vessel has served 5 generations and probably fermented more airag than your local supermarket's dairy aisle has ever seen. By the time the sun begins to slide westward, you've traded a spare scarf for a wheel of salty cheese, tried something that might have been smoked butter soap, jury still out, and politely refused an offer to buy a chicken with a slightly cursed expression. You're also now the semi-proud owner of a carved spoon with curd residue permanently embedded in the grain. And gold? You haven't seen a single coin all day. You sit beside Batar on a rise overlooking the trading grounds. He takes a long sip from his skin of milk, then leans back with a sigh. Gold is good for cities. We are not cities. You nod slowly, watching the herds graze in the distance. The sky overhead turns pink, and the breeze smells faintly of herbs and smoke. Below, a trader counts lumps of cheese with the solemnity of a banker tallying diamonds. The wind is picking up again, tugging at your cloak as you trail behind Batar's caravan. But this time, you're carrying something precious, your very own pouch of fermenting milk. Yes, they finally trusted you with one. It sloshes softly as you ride, strapped against your saddle, a living, burbling bag of yogurt in progress. It's not in a fancy flask, of course. Your airag lives inside a roughly tanned leather bladder that once belonged to a goat named Tolgoi. At least, that's what Batar says, and he swears she had an attitude. Now, she's part of your breakfast. The container is smoky, soft, and lined with years of sour memory. You were warned not to clean it. Ever. You scrub the soul out, the grandmother had muttered. So now you carry Tolgoi's legacy with the reverence of a milk monk. The secret to preserving dairy on the steppe? Movement. The Mongols discovered long ago that constant jostling, whether from galloping, swaying, or even kicking, speeds up fermentation. Hence, the milk bag hangs from your saddle, bouncing like a pouch of fizzy ambition. Each thud brings you closer to drinkability. You ride alongside a teenage girl who has two smaller bladders bouncing from her stirrups. She glances at yours and grins. Your milk will be sour by sunset, she predicts cheerfully. If not, kick it a few more times. You consider giving Tolgoi a motivational boot, but decide instead to let the trail do the work. Historians still debate whether Mongol dairy preservation methods were scientifically understood or just passed through trial and error. But what's undeniable is their effectiveness. No refrigeration, no thermometers, just animal skin, wind, and a deep understanding of rhythm. Honestly, it's the first time you've ever felt close to your yogurt. At the next rest stop, you watch a young boy open his pouch and pour the contents into a carved wooden bowl. It fizzes softly. He takes a sip, nods, then offers it to you. You try it. Your eyes water a little, but the carbonation is there. It's halfway between champagne and warm pickles. A win. Nearby, two women are preparing a batch of tsagan ide, or white foods, a Mongol category for all dairy products, from fresh milk to aged cheese and curdled butter. They lay slices of dried curds on the roof of the gur to dry. The wind crisps them like nature's microwave. Some will be stored for winter. Others will become offerings, or even medicine. That's right. Dairy here doesn't just fill bellies. It heals. You remember an elder earlier rubbing clotted cream on a child's sunburn. Another brewed a pungent tea of curds and herbs to soothe a sore throat. And once, when a horse sneezed violently, someone fed it a spoonful of fermented cream. You're not a vet, but the horse did look mildly insulted. You're handed your first real milk bag maintenance chore, resealing the seam with sinew. It's harder than it looks. The material's slippery, your fingers are clumsy, and at one point you accidentally squirt a jet of semi-fermented milk directly onto your sleeve. Batar snorts. Now you smell like a real herder, he says. Later, sitting around a modest fire, you're offered urum, a thick layer of cream skimmed from boiled milk. It's delicately sweet and spread onto flatbread. This, they tell you, is a delicacy. It takes hours to make and spoils if handled wrong. You chew slowly, appreciating the soft melt. It's like the clouds got tired of floating and decided to settle into butter form. You notice something subtle over time. The containers themselves are as important as the contents. Pouches, flasks, gourds, all seasoned, all reused. Mongol dairy isn't just a practice, it's a system, a mobile pantry of bubbling biology. Everyone in camp can identify who owns which milk bag by the smell alone. You can't even find your socks half the time. At one gur, you're shown a hukur, a large leather vessel used exclusively for fermenting airag. It hangs on a frame like a suspended drum. A woman gently rocks it with her foot while sewing. She doesn't even look up. The motion is automatic, soothing, a lullaby for milk. You ask how old it is. She smiles. It was my mother's, and her mother's. There's something quietly beautiful about that. And then, of course, comes the moment of truth. Your own pouch of airag is uncorked. Everyone gathers. A little girl sniffs it and giggles. A young man holds it up to the light. You take a breath, sip. It's fizzy, tangy, absolutely not like supermarket yogurt. But it's alive. It dances across your tongue with a spark of defiance and a hint of leather. Tolgoy's revenge. Batar claps your back. He says, "You've done well. Your yogurt walks with pride." High praise indeed. As you settle into your blanket, under the stars, milk bag resting nearby like a sleepy pet, you realize this isn't just food. It's rhythm. It's memory. It's a culture that has traveled thousands of miles, not by conquering alone, but by carrying the fermenting essence of home, tied to a saddle, bouncing to the beat of hooves and history. And now, that rhythm is yours too.
You wake to the sound of gentle coughing, and no, not yours this time. One of the older herders, bundled in a woolen robe the color of yesterday's firewood, sits on a blanket made of stitched sheepskin. He looks at you, then gestures toward a steaming bowl of something white and vaguely lumpy. "Medicine," he says. You take a cautious step forward. The air smells faintly of mint, smoke, and soured milk. Of course. Today, you're shadowing a Mongol healer, or emchi, who treats illness not with bandages and pills, but with dairy, herbs, and the occasional prayer to the sky. His toolkit consists of leather pouches, small bone ladles, and an impressive collection of weird-smelling pastes. The centerpiece of his practice, milk. Always milk. The patient this morning, a young boy with a mild fever, has just been given a blend of fermented curds mixed with dried juniper berries and boiled horse milk. You wince as the boy slurps it down without complaint. He even burps politely. The healer nods with satisfaction. He'll sweat by afternoon, he says. Then sleep. You sit nearby, listening as he explains the balance of hot and cold in the body. Fermented milk, according to traditional Mongol belief, cools internal fire and softens the lungs. It's also used topically, spread on burns, insect bites, or even cracked heels. You imagine applying a dollop of yogurt to your sunburn back home. Your roommate would never speak to you again. Historians still argue whether Mongol dairy medicine had genuine scientific merit or was simply ritualistic. There's evidence it worked. Fermented milk contains probiotics, after all, but it's unclear how much of the healing was biological versus belief. Still, when you live far from pharmacies, curds and calm words go a long way. The healer hands you a lump of arul, dried and rock hard, and shows you how to scrape it into a powder for toothaches, or when you miss someone. You blink. Apparently, nostalgia and molars are treated with the same remedy. Later in the morning, you help prepare a batch of saga, a thick, yogurt-like cream stirred for hours and left to sit under a woolen blanket until it sets. It's meant for an elder who's been coughing all week. You ask if honey or garlic is involved. No, only milk from the morning's first mare. He seems absolutely certain of its power. You walk with him to deliver the cream. Along the way, he points out plants used in tandem with dairy, the dusty green artemisia, which helps soothe the stomach, or the stinging nettle, brewed into a tea and drunk with curds to chase ghosts out of the blood. He picks a few leaves, stuffs them into a pouch, then drops a cube of dried yogurt in after them. This, he says, is for headaches and long walks. You take mental notes and try not to sneeze. Outside another gur, a woman sits with her foot propped up on a goat. She's nursing a burn from a cooking fire. The healer leans down, scoops a dollop of chartos, clarified yellow butter, and smears it gently across the reddened skin. You suppress a shudder. The woman doesn't flinch. Clarified butter is used liberally here, not just for cooking, but for lamp oil, skin salve, and occasionally spiritual offerings. It's considered pure and oddly sacred. In some rituals, drops of melted butter are tossed into the fire as a way to please the spirits of ancestors. You're offered a chance to try it. You toss, the butter sizzles, and somewhere in the distance, a horse whinnies, possibly in approval. By midday, a line forms at the healer's tent. One man complains of stomach cramps. Another has sore knees. A child giggles, pointing at her swollen cheek. For each ailment, the solution involves some variant of dairy: soured milk, churned butter, dried curds, warm cream. Occasionally, the healer tosses in a muttered chant and a symbolic spitting motion. You're not sure if it's necessary, but it adds flair. One of the more curious treatments you see involves milk smoke. The healer places a small ceramic bowl over hot coals, adds a few spoonfuls of dried milk fat, and lets it smolder. The smoke is fanned toward a woman with a bad cold. She inhales slowly, eyes closed, the smell wafting around her like milky incense. You nearly gag, but she looks serene. There's even a treatment for nightmares. A pouch of curd hung above the sleeper's head, supposedly to absorb bad dreams. You're tempted to try it tonight, if only to confuse any lurking ghosts with your sour aroma. By late afternoon, the healer has brewed a mixture of thickened milk and ground-up seeds. He ladles it into a clay cup and hands it to an elder. You lean in and ask what this one's for. "She is sad," he says simply. You nod and step away quietly. You reflect on the role of healing in a place without pharmacies, without easy access to doctors or supplies. The steppe demands resilience, and dairy has answered that call for centuries. It's more than food. It's comfort, familiarity, a balm passed from hand to hand, generation to generation. Back in camp, the healer pats your shoulder. He offers you a final spoonful of urim with a wink. "Good for the heart," he says. You take it. The cream is thick, gently sweet, and soft on your tongue. And maybe, just maybe, your heartbeat steadies a little.
You're on the move again. The sun has barely finished yawning over the horizon, and already your horse is trotting along a narrow, well-worn track through the grass. There's no real road, just the ghost of hooves that came before you. The wind whistles in your ears. The air smells like leather, pine sap, and a faint sour tang from your saddlebag. That last one? It's yogurt. Again. Today, you're shadowing a mounted messenger, a wiry man named Ink, who seems to live in perpetual motion. He barely speaks, but you get the idea. Stay close, hold on, and if you drop your milk, you drink it anyway. Mounted couriers were the arteries of the Mongol Empire. They galloped across continents, delivering messages sealed in bone cylinders, powered not by gold, but by pure, portable calories. And what did they eat on the road? You guessed it, milk. Ink gestures to his saddlebag. Inside is a pouch of airag, a block of arul, and a lumpy packet of what looks like stale cheese. This, you're told, is a day's ration. No snacks, no surprises, just dairy. You reach into your own saddlebag. Your pouch of airag, Tolgoy's second batch, is fizzy and slightly warm. You give it a shake. It bubbles like it's plotting something. You take a sip. Still alive, still tangy, still weirdly energizing. Riding with Ink is unlike anything you've done before. He barely slows down. At each station, a small tent with a fresh horse waiting, he swaps mounts and throws back a gulp of milk. The pouch never leaves his side. It hangs from his hip like a sword, full of sour sustenance. You start to think of it as a living companion, muttering quietly with every hoofbeat. Historians still argue whether Mongol messengers carried written orders or simply memorized them. Some accounts suggest they recited messages from memory, like long, galloping poems. Others believe the messages were coded and sealed in tubes. But no one debates what fueled them. Dairy. Always dairy. By noon, you've learned the routine. Ride, gulp, ride, chew curd, ride again. You gnaw on your arul. It's dry, dense, and determined to remain whole. You try to soften it with a little airag. It doesn't help much. Your jaw feels like it's lifting weights. Ink hands you something wrapped in hide. Travel cheese, he mutters. Inside is biaslag, a salty cheese made from boiled milk and pressed overnight under stones. It crumbles like dusty tofu and tastes determined. You chase it with another sip from Tolgoy. The taste is evolving. Still tart, but deeper now, slightly smokier. You pretend it's intentional. As you ride through a patch of tall reeds, Ink slows to check a marker. A carved stone with a spiral etched into it. It's a relay sign. These markers told messengers where to veer off, where to change horses, where to find shelter. Beside it, a weathered pouch hangs from a tree. Inside, a backup stash of dried curds and a tightly wrapped note. Emergency fuel. You take a break at a lonely outpost. There's a small fire pit, a half-buried milk pot, and a tattered hide hanging to block the wind. Ink pours his airag into a shallow bowl and warms it over the coals. You watch as the milk thickens, steams, and begins to smell like someone's simmering socks. It keeps you fast, he explains. Good legs, good sleep. You sip. It's sour now, but oddly cozy, like drinking a memory of movement. A goat wanders into camp. Ink pats its head and mutters a blessing. Then he produces a flask of Shimian Arki. Distilled from fermented milk, it's Mongol milk vodka, strong, clear, and not for beginners. He offers you a thimble-sized sip. You accept. It burns politely, like fire with manners. You sit together in silence, watching the wind comb through the grass. The landscape is vast but gentle. Time moves differently here. Maybe it rides with the messengers, always half a step ahead. You ask Ink if he ever gets tired of drinking milk. He shrugs. Better than hunger. Fair. There's a comfort in the repetition. Milk, curd, ride, rest. You start to think this is what made the Mongol Empire work. Not just horses or tactics, but sustenance you could carry, ferment, and share. You don't need a palace when your dinner rides with you. Later, you help Ink clean his pouch. He scrapes the inside gently with a flat stick, preserving the bacterial culture. Then,
He adds fresh milk from a mare nearby, ties it shut, and swings it onto his saddle. The process never stops. It's like breathing, invisible, rhythmic, essential. You ride again as the sky deepens into copper. The horses pant softly. You chew the last of your cheese. A soft burp escapes before you can stop it. Ink doesn't laugh, but you swear the goat does. The courier pulls up at a ridge overlooking a river. You both dismount, stretch, and sip. The land glows orange and gold, and suddenly your pouch of sour milk feels like a small treasure. Not just for nutrition, but for continuity. A thread that links rider to rider, meal to mile, past to present. You sit in silence, cradling the gently fizzing pouch. This, you realize, is the taste of motion.
You return to the camp that evening, a little saddle sore and a lot more respectful of airag. Your pouch has taken on an almost pet-like importance, and you cradle it like it might share secrets if you just listen hard enough. The stars above shimmer like distant cooking fires, and you're ushered into a quieter part of the encampment. Tonight, you're sleeping near the palace kitchen. Not a palace in the stone and gold sense, of course. This is the Khan's mobile headquarters, a vast sprawl of richly adorned gares, surrounded by horses so well-groomed they practically gleam. But what's drawing you in tonight isn't the throne. It's the kitchen. You duck into a wide gare lit by fat-fueled lamps, and the smell hits you. Roasted meat, wood smoke, and, you guessed it, a background note of warm, fermenting milk. In the center, a circle of women and older men churn, stir, and sip with methodical grace. You're not just in a kitchen, you're in a dairy temple. The head cook is a stooped man with quick fingers and an even quicker tongue. "You've been drinking the sour stuff," he says, giving your breath a mock sniff. "Come, taste what we make for the Khan." And so you do. He offers a bowl of chigi, curdled milk boiled until thick, then cooled into a kind of silky pudding. It's both rich and tangy, as though cream cheese went on an enlightening horseback retreat. You nod solemnly. "For strength," the cook says, "good bones, long life. Even Khan likes it before battle." That raises an eyebrow. Was Genghis Khan, a name that still echoes like distant thunder, really a fan of yogurt? Some say yes. Others say he preferred meat and kumis. But many Mongol sources mention his fondness for dairy as ritual, refreshment, and resilience. Historians still debate just how much fermented milk influenced the Khan's health and vigor. Was his battlefield endurance bolstered by probiotics? Did fermented enzymes aid in digestion as he rode across China, Persia, and Europe? Or was it all symbolic, drinking the milk of the steppe to remain tethered to its wild spirit? No one agrees. But you watch the cooks stir that milk like they're mixing a potion, not a meal. You're invited to try borsuk, deep-fried dough served with clotted cream and a drizzle of fermented honey milk. It's the closest thing to dessert you've had in days, and the sweetness hits like a whisper. His favorite, the cook says with a wink, especially before making decisions. You try not to imagine Genghis Khan planning a siege while licking cream off his fingers. Next, they present a slab of itski, milk boiled down until it becomes dense, rubbery, and sliceable. The cook cuts you a piece with a ceremonial knife and sprinkles dried berries over it. "For clarity," he says, handing it over. You chew slowly. It tastes like resolve, and maybe slightly of sheep. Around the fire pit, pots bubble with more than just soup. One large cauldron contains a mix of boiled milk and bone broth, a restorative drink for riders returning from the frontier. The consistency is halfway between broth and porridge, and the aroma is surprisingly soothing. You take a sip, and it wraps around your tongue like a woolen blanket. Then someone brings out the honored pouch, a special kukur used only for preparing the Khan's airag. It's older than you are, maybe older than indoor plumbing. Stitched and restitched, it has the patina of something alive. Only 2 people are allowed to touch it, and you are not one of them. You keep a respectful distance as they stir it with a thick bulur, never washed, darkened by time. The airag inside is reserved for tomorrow's strategy council. You ask why not wine or water. A young kitchen hand shrugs. Wine makes men loud. Milk makes them think. A silence settles over the group. Someone hums. You recognize the tune, one of the songs from the feast days ago. It's a lullaby for warriors and cooks alike. Later, a quiet moment. The cook sets a bowl of airag beside the fire and mutters a blessing. For the ancestors, he says. You're told that before major battles, Genghis Khan would offer fermented milk to the spirits, poured onto the ground, into fire, or even left to evaporate on stone. It was nourishment beyond the body, a gesture of humility, or maybe insurance. You ask what happens if the airag is bad. He chuckles. Then the spirits complain, and the horses stumble. You're handed one last treat, a warm cloth-wrapped ball that turns out to be milk skin layered over boiled cream. It's chewy, rich, and melts into your mouth like fermented marshmallow. A favorite of the Khan's youngest son, the cook says, voice soft. He used to steal it before meals. As the cooking dies down, you sit near the hearth, cradling a wooden cup. The flames flicker. Someone snores gently. The kitchen, once bustling, now hums like a lullaby. You imagine Genghis Khan here, not the conqueror, but the man, sitting cross-legged, bowl in hand, soot on his fingers, sipping the same sour, smooth blend now coating your teeth. A man of empire, yes, but also of earth, fire, and milk. You sip again. It's sour, alive, ancient. Like him. You've gotten used to it by now. The way milk is offered before questions, during greetings, and, curiously, at the start of tense conversations. Today is no different. You're ushered into a smaller jur, nestled beside the Khan's council tent, where a quiet gathering of diplomats is underway. You take your seat on a low cushion, your knees pressed against a cool felt rug embroidered with clouds and horses. In the center sits a low, broad tray with 6 bowls of airag. No gold, no scrolls, no flaming torches, just fermented milk offered before anyone dares speak. This, you're told, is sour diplomacy, a tradition rooted in the Mongol custom of offering fermented milk to guests, dignitaries, even enemies. Before words come milk, before treaties, a clink of wooden bowls. The men and women gathered here are from far and wide. A Chinese envoy in muted silk, a diplomat from the Khwarezm region with a jewel-studded belt, and a scholar from the Persian court who smells faintly of parchment and cumin. None of them reach for their drink until the Khan's representative does. Then, slowly, deliberately, they sip. You follow. The milk today is a bit stronger, sharper on the nose, thicker on the tongue. It's not here to please. It's here to unify. A shared flavor, sour enough to silence pride and force the tongue to acknowledge the place it rests in. You glance around. Everyone has the same look, a slight wincing, then respectful nodding. No one insults the airag.
Historians still argue whether this ritual began as hospitality or as subtle control. Was the milk a peace gesture, a test, a symbol of trust in its simplest sour form? Some scholars believe refusing to drink could doom a negotiation. Others suggest that whoever drank first was signaling submission, or at least the willingness to play by the steppes rules. You listen as the diplomats begin discussing border concerns, trade routes, grazing rights. The conversation is slow, almost hypnotic. Voices rise and fall gently, like wind across the plains. No shouting, no dramatic outbursts. Occasionally, someone pauses to refill their bowl. That alone seems to carry more weight than words. You're served a small plate of arul and dried berries. Dipping the curds into the airag softens them, and they melt in your mouth with an odd grace. The combination, sour, sweet, and grainy, keeps your jaw moving and your mind quiet. Maybe that's the point. If your mouth is full, you don't interrupt. One elder, speaking on behalf of a western province, recounts how the Khan once settled a 3-year dispute by offering a particularly fine batch of mare's milk and asking the two parties to churn it together. They did. Then they drank it. Somehow, the feud dissolved. You ask quietly if that's true. The elder grins. If it wasn't, it should be. Nearby, the Persian scholar produces a gift pouch, a delicately stitched bag of saffron-scented goat milk powder. He presents it with both hands. A translator murmurs, "For your fermentation, may it taste of sunshine." The Mongol host nods deeply, and in return offers a carved wooden ladle believed to be over 100 years old, its handle dark with generations of stirring. This, it seems, is diplomacy, not through decree, but dairy. Even the phrases used are milk-centered. "We churn together" means to negotiate. "Spoiling the pot" means to sabotage trust. "Our bowls don't curdle" is the final sign of harmony. You jot mental notes in between mouthfuls, trying not to giggle. Somewhere in the West, ambassadors are screaming across marble halls. Here, they're sharing yogurt and poetry. Later, the talk turns tense, border tensions with a southern kingdom. The Khan's representative, a slender man with a hawk-like face, raises a hand. The room quiets. He lifts his bowl, swirls the milk, and drinks slowly, a full swallow. Everyone watches. The southern envoy follows. Then, one by one, each diplomat drinks again. No words, just the glug of quiet resolve. Afterwards, dried cheese is passed around, sharp and gritty, almost aggressive in flavor. You're told it's agreement cheese. Once eaten, it symbolically seals the pact, though it may also just be a way to keep your mouth shut for a few more minutes while your taste buds recover. You're handed a bowl of milk steeped with herbs. Milk tea, the digestif of diplomacy. It's soothing, warm, and full of sleepy clove and fennel notes. You sip, your body calming, eyelids heavier. The atmosphere has shifted. What began sour has ended smooth. Someone offers a toast. To sour things made sweet. Bowls clink gently, like tiny drums. No contracts are signed, no paper is exchanged, but the nods are firm, the smiles, however faint, linger. As you leave the jur, the wind tickles your ears and the sun begins to dip below the farthest hill. You realize you've witnessed an empire built not only on steel and saddle, but on rituals, shared liquids, and the silent language of bowls raised in peace. You take one last sip from your pouch. It's warmer now, softer, friendlier.
You're riding again, this time toward a smaller settlement on the edge of the encampment, where herders trade more casually. No polished diplomacy, no ceremonial ladles, just neighbors bartering over goats, wool, and, naturally, yogurt. But there's something different in the air today. Word has spread that someone brought a pot of thick, clotted cream from a distant province, and people are whispering about it like it's treasure. You dismount near the center of town, where a low table holds the mythical bowl, hidden under a layer of embroidered cloth. The woman guarding it eyes the curious crowd with the mild suspicion of someone who knows they're holding the steppes version of a Fabergé egg. Someone tries to trade a pair of silver earrings, rejected. Another offers a rare spiral-carved horn spoon. Tempting, but no. Then a man walks up, unwraps a bundle of smoked yak meat, and adds a chunk of rock-hard arul as a bonus. The crowd leans in. The cream keeper squints, tastes the offering, and finally nods. The bowl is his, just like that. No gold changed hands, no jewels, just sustenance. This clotted cream, made by slowly heating fresh milk, letting it cool and skimming off the top, has the power to outshine any gilded object. Its dense, buttery texture and rich flavor make it the peak of dairy prestige. You get a taste thanks to Batar, who bartered a leather bridle earlier in exchange for a small dish. "Try this, and you'll understand why gold rusts in our mouths," he says. You take a careful spoonful. It's smooth, slightly sweet, and heavier than your thoughts. It clings to your tongue in the best way possible. Here in the heart of the Mongol steppe, gold is merely decorative. It doesn't feed your children. It doesn't cool your fever or nourish your horse. But cream wins hearts. Historians still argue whether Mongol tribes used gold for any practical purposes. Some archaeological evidence shows gold ornaments, belt buckles, or earrings, but almost all appear ceremonial. Mongol wealth wasn't in vaults. It grazed in the fields, kicked up dust, and mooed at dawn. A local herder named Tuvshin invites you to his ger for lunch. His family of 7 sits in a circle around a steaming pot of meat, stewed with fermented cream. "This is richer than the Khan's taxes," he jokes. You laugh, even though you're not quite sure if it's a joke or a quiet truth. As you eat, the family shares how they judge a guest's character, not by what they wear, but how they treat a bowl of milk. A respectful guest never gulps, never spills, and always finishes. Leaving a few drops at the bottom is tradition, a sign of humility and gratitude. After the meal, they bring out a curious object, a pouch filled with dried curd chips, shaped like small coins. The kids call them steppe money, and they use them in games, wagers, and mock trades. It's equal parts snack and currency. "We chew our wealth," the grandmother laughs, handing you a handful. You oblige. Your jaw protests, but your pride doesn't. You wander outside to a small marketplace where a man is trying to trade a hand-carved mirror for a single wedge of cheese aged in an animal stomach. The vendor hesitates. Finally, the buyer offers to throw in a day of horse grooming. Deal sealed. Elsewhere, a young woman proudly displays her milk jewelry, beads made from hardened clotted cream and pressed curd, strung on hair-thin sinew. It's not for wearing so much as for gifting. Each bead represents a good season, a strong mare, or a safe winter. No one is counting coins. They're counting calories, connections, and memories. You begin to notice how wealth here is measured in generosity. The richest man isn't the one with the biggest herd, but the one who shares the most milk.
A good neighbor offers cream to the elderly before feeding himself. A bride's dowry includes the family's best fermenting pouch. A funeral isn't complete without milk poured onto the earth to bless the soul's journey. A boy tugs your sleeve and offers you a scoop of fresh airag from a wooden ladle, polished smooth by use. You smile, accept, and ask his name. But Erdene, he says proudly, strong jewel. You ask if he prefers jewels or yogurt. He laughs. Jewel is name. Yogurt is life. Later, you sit beneath a wind-worn tree with batar and watch the sun glaze the plains with copper. He points at a merchant displaying a set of golden rings. No one stopping. Too heavy, he mutters. Can't eat it. Can't ride it. Can't churn it. He offers you another spoon of the now famous clotted cream. It's softening in the heat, taking on a silkier feel. The wind smells of grass, fire, and faint sweetness. You think about all the stories you've heard. Goats that earned estates, pouches that carried legacies, bowls that bound strangers into friends. And here, with cream on your tongue and dust in your boots, you finally get it. Gold may glitter, but it can't ferment.
The smell hits you first. Not in a bad way, not entirely. It's earthy, smoky, and yes, a little bit sour, but it's purposeful, intentional. A smell that says, this is the ancient refrigerator of the steppe. Respect the funk. Today, you're exploring the Mongol science of dairy storage. And let's be clear, it's not cold boxes and foil lids. It's dried dung, buried pots, and 1,000 years of trial and error. You led by a pair of sisters, Tungalag and OU, who run the camp's storage operation. Their jur is surrounded by mounds of carefully stacked dung bricks, shaped like wonky pancakes and dried under the open sky. OU pats a pile fondly. Our firewood, she says. And our fridge. You blink. Surely not. But yes, dried dung fires burn at a steady, low heat and produce very little smoke, perfect for gently drying dairy products like arul, urum, and tarag. Over the years, the Mongols discovered that the ash and smoke from these fires also acted as natural preservatives, creating a sterile barrier that kept mold and pests away. It's functional and weirdly effective. Tungalag takes you behind the jur, where a series of small stone pits are dug into the ground. Covered with planks and tightly woven mats, these are ice pits used for storing milk and butter through summer. Some are deep enough to hit permafrost, turning them into steppe coolers. She lifts one cover and reveals several tightly sealed bags, airag in various stages of fermentation. Each one is from a different day, she says. We taste by scent. She opens one and inhales deeply, then hands it to you. You cautiously follow suit. The aroma is sharp, fizzy, with hints of, is that plum? Maybe not. Your nose doesn't know what to do, but you nod anyway. Historians still argue whether Mongols inherited these preservation techniques from earlier nomadic cultures or developed them independently. Some believe these methods go back to the Scythians. Others credit Turkicurters from Central Asia. Either way, it's a system honed by necessity and perfected by stubbornness. Tungalag shows you their milk ladder, a wooden rack where thin strips of curd are hung like laundry, drying in the wind. Some pieces are tied with red thread to signify batches meant for ceremonial use. Others are destined for trade, gifts, or medicine. Nearby, a boy stomps rhythmically on a sealed leather bag. You stare. This helps mix it, OU explains. The weight pushes it into itself. You don't ask follow-up questions. You just accept that here, stomping your milk is a valid step in its preparation. The sisters lead you to a smokehouse made of stones and dung bricks. Inside hangs a string of smoked cheese balls, each about the size of a plum, hardened to the point of self-defense. These can last months, even years, and are often stored in sheep stomach pouches, sewn shut and aged underground.
It sounds horrifying. It smells ancient. You ask how they know when something is spoiled. Tungalag squints. When it walks away. Fair. Lunch is served outside. Boiled dumplings filled with minced mutton and served with a dollop of aged cream. You hesitate, eyeing the bowl. Oyu grins. That's from last autumn. You take a bite. It's intense, tangy, almost like blue cheese married a yogurt and moved into a basement. After lunch, you help Oyu clean an old kukur. She explains that when the leather starts to wear, they seal the inside with clay and ash, let it sit in the sun, then re-smoke it over pine. The goal isn't cleanliness, it's balance. A clean bag won't ferment right. A seasoned bag holds the spirit of 1,000 breakfasts. Then you're taught the art of ash wrapping, rolling balls of butter and powdered dung ash before storing them in jars. The ash absorbs moisture and repels insects. It also gives the butter a faintly smoky flavor. Not for guests, for winter. You nod, realizing that you've entered the elite tier of food prepping, apocalypse-friendly dairy. In a quiet moment, you sit beside the ice pit and watch the clouds stretch across the sky. A small goat curls up beside your leg. You reach into your pouch and take a sip of airag. It's matured since morning, deeper, more complex, almost peppery. You marvel at how it's changed without a single modern tool. Nearby, Oyu hums a lullaby as she stirs a pot of simmering milk. Tungalag stacks the last of the dung bricks with practiced ease. The jers smells like smoke, milk, and the slow wisdom of repetition. And suddenly, it all makes sense. In a world without clocks or refrigerators, fermentation becomes time. The milk changes as the day does. The pouch becomes a calendar. The taste becomes a map. And you're no longer just drinking yogurt. You're drinking history.